Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Piotr Mazur. I have the pleasure to present our report on climate policy, the report titled A Review of Climate Policies of Selected European Countries. I would like to speak about the analytical activities of Institut Promyk. In the Institute, I'm responsible for the coordination of the analytical department, and the analytical department is one of the pillars of our institute. Until now, our experts published 9 reports on various subject matters. Among them was public mass transportation, was the impacts of using social media, and also analyses on public policies. These were reports which we conducted together with the New Direction think tank, and on the basis of these reports we organized last year our conference dedicated to public policies in Europe. We could say that this report on climate policy is a anniversary jubilee report because it's a report number 10. So it's published by our institute. In the report on climate policy, we've concentrated on climate policies of selected European countries. What is climate policy? Climate policy is a relatively new concept which appeared with the acceleration global climate changes, and it's nothing else than a collective of measures which are to counteract these climate changes. The concept of climate policy became popular thanks to the European Union, which in 2014 defined the framework of energy and climate by 2030, and within those that framework, they define the objectives which member states have to fulfill. And for among these objectives is limiting greenhouse gases emissions and increasing the share of RESs in national energy markets. In our report, we've subjected 7 countries of Europe to Europe, 6 members of the European Union, and Great Britain. Why Great Britain? Because climate policy conducted by the United Kingdom is in line with activities and measures conducted by the European Union and quite similar. Moreover, in the report we analyzed the activities of the Czech Republic, France, Germany, Sweden, Hungary, and Italy. From this place, I would like to thank our experts sincerely, because part of those sections was prepared by and developed by another expert, and that's why I would like to thank Krzysztof Białas, who is part of the team, Maria Olewińska, Weronika Dumin, Karolina Czerwińska, Weronika Grabowska, and Michał Kocharski. The last part of our report we've dedicated to recommendations on the best solutions in the area of climate and energy, and we've presented them in the form of applications which could currently are being implemented in Poland. Now I would like to go on to the presentation of each individual country. The first country which I will introduce and present is our southern neighbor, Czechia. The Czech Republic is faced with similar challenges in the area of climate and energy, with similar challenges on climate and energy such as Poland, since the current Czech market is based on coal. In this case, it's bituminous coal or lignite, which is in the northwestern part of the country. Moreover, the Czech, as well as Poland, are the only countries in the European Union which until now, on quite a mass scale, are extracting hard coal. The Czech are also intensely using energy from nuclear power plants, and they constitute over 30% of energy in the electrical energy in the Czech Republic. And it's generated in two power plants in Temelín and Dukovany. The Czech have a strategy of moving away from coal, of decarbonization, and according to the new Czech Prime Minister, Petra Fiala, the Czechs will withdraw from using coal by 2033. From the Czech Republic, we move to France. And here I'll present France as a kind of prime leader in energy transformation in Europe, because France is one of the countries in the European Union which has one of the lowest CO2 emissions in Europe. This is caused by the fact that nuclear energy from nuclear power plants is ubiquitously used. So you can say that France is the fatherland of the atom, because on the example of electrical energy from those atomic power plants, there is over 70% of France's electricity. France holds one of the largest and most modern nuclear parks and installations. Even that, the French have defined in their energy strategy partial decrease of the amount of energy coming from electronic power plants towards a pivot towards RESs. Remaining with France, the French are dedicating a lot of resources for the decarbonization of their automotive sector, and this translates to considerable emissions of greenhouse gases by the French transport sector. This transport sector emits 1/3 of greenhouse gases. From France we come back to Germany, but we cross the Rhine River, and Germany is a country which has controversial energy and climate policy because of the customary use of gas, which to a great extent comes from import and is imported from Russia. Here's an example of Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, which was supposed to flow into Germany, but because of the current geopolitical situation, has been halted. Except for that, the Germans are investing a lot into RESs. Here is an example and a symbol of German policy in energy transformation, which is called Energiewende, or wind farms, and a symbol of the expansion of this type of energy in other countries of the world. In terms of in Europe, in general, Germans are using energy coming from the sun, solar energy. They are the fourth in the world manufacturer of this type of energy, and they're using broadly used in households. Households have photovoltaic systems which can store energy and sell them to other entities, such as to their neighbors. From Germany, we go a little bit north and land in Sweden. Sweden, as France, is part of the group of climate energy policy. From the 1980s of the last century, they are taking advantage of RESs and RES sources. Why? Because they are Swedish natural resources such as water. And here in Sweden we meet with a lot of biomass coming from which constitutes 70% of the country, covers 70% of the country. The Swedes also started to develop nuclear energy strongly at that time. Unfortunately, those attempts on the development of the atom were held up by the fear, first by the accident at 3 Mile Island in the US in 1979, and then the catastrophe in Chernobyl in 1986. Despite some of the changes at the beginning of the 21st century on moving away from atom, the Swedes are still maintaining the scenario of phasing out, and those power plants are to be phased out by 2040. And the gap left by them will be fulfilled by wind energy. The Swedes want to develop the atom. They are also developing wind farms, and both onshore and offshore. A good example here can be the biggest wind farm in Europe, which is being built in Sweden, and the expansion of wind energy, wind offshore, so type, which the Swedes have a lot of big plans for, and they want to conduct on the Baltic and Northern Sea. The Swedes also, with success, are decarbonizing their transport, and this is caused by the fact that the Swedish government has introduced a good financing system for purchasing low and zero emissions vehicles. Within that financing, you can obtain a subsidy at a level of over 6,700 euro. Moreover, the Swedes are financing the purchase and installation of private chargers of electrical vehicles in cars, and also they are decarbonizing public transportation. Here also There are vehicles, electrical vehicles that fall in, but also those run on biofuels. Those are fuels which are biogases, are very popular in Sweden, and mass transportation vehicles in Sweden are fueled by this type of fuel. Another country which climate policy we have analyzed is Great Britain. Great Britain started becoming involved in climate policy in 2008. At that time, the Climate Change Act appeared, where the strategy of fighting climate changes was discussed. Great Britain, the UK, uses RESs extensively, and offshore wind farms. Offshore wind farms is represented by the graph, and it shows that British wind farms on the sea constitute 29% of all capacities of wind turbines worldwide. So in this area they exceed even the People's Republic of China. Not much, but they do exceed that. In order to develop those countries, it's the document. The document is called the 10-Point for a Green Industrial Revolution, and it contains a developmental program of renewable energy sources, and within those activities, the development of wind energy, electromobility, other ships, and also work on ecological hydrogen. From the UK, we come back to Central Europe and we land in Hungary. Hungary is a country that is known for the fact that their energy and climate policy raises considerable controversies. According to the Hungarian government, the measures, climate and energy measures conducted are to lead to the fact that Hungarian residents do not incur the costs of climate and maintain energy at the least expensive price. The most common type of energy in Hungary is energy coming from a nuclear power plant. Hungarians have one power plant. It's in the city of Pax, about 100 kilometers from Budapest, the capital. And Pax is responsible for the production of the majority of Hungarian energy, which is represented in this table, and the production of electrical energy in Hungary, and comes from energy in the Pax power plant. With that, you can say that there is a controversy, because this was a power plant built in the times of communism, and currently it requires modernization. Its reactors, if they will not, have to be shut down by 2027. The Hungarians wanting to supply that energy in Hungary, they decided to take action, and in that case they concluded an agreement with the Russians to refurbish the power plant. This was in 2014. The agreement for the refurbishment was from 10 to 12 billion euro. And with that agreement, there were considerable perturbations. I can say in short that the expansion of the Pax power plant, nuclear power plant, hasn't started, and its costs have definitely increased. The agreement has become more controversial in the meantime in the context of the events which are currently in the Ukraine.
Hungary has also made another controversial deal to import Russian gas, which is the second largest energy supply source after nuclear energy in Hungary. Now, the last state we have been analyzing, it's Italy. Italy is also undergoing an intensive energy transformation. They have a national integrated energy and climate plan. It was implemented in 2020. It outlines the most important goals, and one of them is to develop renewable energy sources. They have plans up to by 2030 for renewable energy to account for 55% of the whole energy market. And renewables will mean here wind farms, also geothermal energy, which is already popular in Italy, and also solar energy. And this is because Italy has some favorable conditions for solar power. Interestingly, Italy, like many other Western countries, in the 70s and in the 80s, invested a lot in developing nuclear energy. But I've already mentioned Chernobyl, and because of Chernobyl, they decided to stop developing nuclear energies. And you can see one of the plants, one of the Italian nuclear plants in the south of Italy, in the Campania, in this region. This was the time when the plant was operational, so I suppose 60s to 70s. The 60s or the 70s, and therefore in the 90s they phased out the last nuclear plant. But at the beginning of the century they started thinking about going back to nuclear energy, but again this was stopped because of another nuclear incident, namely Japan and the earthquake and Fukushima. The automotive industry is very strong in Italy. Therefore, Italy has been investing a lot in decarbonizing this sector. Italian automotive companies have been developing low-emission or zero-emission vehicles, and the Italian transformation plans also consider a plan to subsidize cars, electric cars, but also electric bikes and motorbikes. So I've walked you through 7 countries and their climate policies. Now the last part of the report, namely the most important recommendations. I mean recommendations that might be used in Poland or maybe are already in use. So recommendation number 1. So Poland should advocate in the international community for nuclear energy to be considered a green source of energy in the European Union. So for this purpose, France and the Czech Republic have made what we call the nuclear alliance. It hit the headlines in 2021, and they published an open letter. They urge the European Union to consider nuclear power a green source of energy. Poland has joined the alliance. And Poland should continue to advocate for the EU to consider nuclear energy a green source of energy, because Poland is planning to build nuclear power plants. These plans might be blocked by some other European states which don't want nuclear energy. And Germany is such a country and is a neighbor of Poland. Recommendation number 2 is to use small modular reactors. This is an innovative technology, but a couple of obstacles here. Now there is not a single reactor of this type that would be operational, and all such reactors are in the phase of planning preparation. So using this technology, SMR, might speed up decarbonization among other sectors in the heating industry. Some important Polish companies have already decided to research SMR. This includes KGHM and PKN Orlen. Recommendation number 3 is to develop offshore plants, wind farms in the Baltic Sea. We are tapping into the German and the British experience here, because I've already mentioned the British. They are investing and carrying out a lot of projects, offshore wind projects. And Poland should also do this. Currently, there are a few Polish companies, such as the electricity company PGE, which is planning to build offshore farms in the Baltic Sea. But what we need to do is to expand further and allocate more space for offshore wind farms in the bidding process. These wind turbines are located far away from the population, and this might boost the potential of wind farms in Poland. Recommendation number 4 is to use and produce biogas in Poland on a larger scale. This is also something that other Western countries have already done, because France, Germany and Sweden already use biogas. Sweden has a network of small biogas plants, and this biogas is used for transport, for cars, for public transportation. Poland has a very strong farming and agri-food industry. So this industry could supply a lot of organic waste for biogas manufacturing. So Poland should develop biogas production, should build more biogas plants. And this is because in the future biogas could be a valuable alternative to natural gas. Given the current geopolitical situation, natural gas is quite expensive and it's not easily accessible. Recommendation number 5 is for Poland to use hydrogen. I mean green hydrogen here. It could be a valuable alternative fuel. It could be good for transport, for public transportation, for instance. And there are plans to develop the network of buses, hydrogen-run buses, that would be used for public transportation in Poland. And this takes us to the next recommendation, which is using EU funds and subsidies to upgrade Polish public transportation to make the fleet low or zero emission. So I've already mentioned buses, but also railways are very important here because it is a green, a low emission means of transport. So the European Green Deal funds could be used for that purpose in Poland. Some commentators consider this fund a controversial scheme, but this way we could use it in a very positive way, because we could use it to modernize public transportation. In Poland, there are public transportation companies which already have experience in using the EU funds to modernize their rolling stock. PKP is a Polish railway operator which already has used funds to upgrade their rolling stock, and this can be continued so that more investments are made into the rolling stock, but also the railway infrastructure. And the last recommendation is also about transportation. It's about subsidizing charging points for electric vehicles. And let me stress that this would be chargers for private users. This is also an idea borrowed from Sweden. In Sweden, if an individual wants to buy a charger, this is partly subsidized by the state. In Poland, we've heard about some plans that we could do the same for households. So there is the project My Electrician. It's a scheme. It's a subsidy if you want to buy an electric car or a low emission or a zero emission car. Well, such schemes, to a large extent, would make life easier for electric car owners, and they would also popularize this sort of form of transport, because still there is a huge issue involved in using electric cars, and this is precisely charging the car. It's quite problematic. Thank you so much from me. Well, I do encourage you to read the whole report. It's available on our website, the Promyk Institute website, and under the tab of Research and Analysis. So it's available both in Polish and English. You can download it in PDF, and here in this room you can also pick up a book, a paper copy. I can see that Michał is here. He has been the coordinator of the printing process. So he has already handed out the reports. But if you want a copy, you can grab it here today during the conference. Thank you, and I'll give the floor to the moderator.